Hello, hello. We are live. Time to get savage. Welcome back. Welcome if you are new. If you like this kind of content, be sure to subscribe. I do this every day, every few days. Yesterday I did a long one. Didn't mean it to get that long. I was just sort of in the flow, right? Being an animal. And so today I'm going to talk about evil. I don't know what else you want to call it, folks. We know what we're supposed to do with regards to climate change, global heating. The physics are well established. They were established 150 years ago. The relevant data to understand what's really happening in real time has been well established, certainly for the last 40 years. Plenty of time. That's generational time, right? Plenty of time for us to have a generational discussion about what we're going to do. I was just a little kid when the fossil fuel industries discovered that they were contributing to global heating and decided to suppress that information, which is, like I said in my last video, that's their call. They can do that. That's business. Businesses do that all the time. You don't like how businesses, lie about their business, right? Like they lied about tobacco and they lied about, everything else, the auto industry and pollutants. And if you don't like businesses lying, then put them out of business, right? Businesses lie, businesses obfuscate, businesses misdirect. That's what they do. They buy Congress people, they buy presidents, they assassinate presidents. Businesses are very busy doing business, and all that is business. Not all businesses do those kinds of things, but they all would if they could get away with it. Yes, they all would if they could get away with it. But they can't generally, so they don't. Generally, what's wrong with us? That we knew all this was going to happen in the 70s, and the fossil fuel industry was sufficiently convinced that all this was going to happen. The death spiral was going to become a thing, as I described it in the last video, that they were sufficiently convinced themselves that they set out to, bribe and buy and coerce their way into eternity. Now we can't stop them. They won. But it was business, okay? You can't even fault them for that. They just did what businesses do. And in the process of doing what they did, they destroyed the human world. They got rich, but that's all they have to do. All they have to do is make a profit every quarter. Every quarter, the CEO and the rest of the people running the company have to go back to the shareholders through the board and convince the shareholders that they did the best they could this quarter to increase market share, increase profits, stamp out competitors, sleaze their way into political influence. Every quarter they have to do that. And as soon as they've done that for this quarter, then they really have to start preparing to do it the next quarter. And that's all they can think about. So of course, as soon as they realized that their business was going to come under fire for altering the Earth dynamic system and creating global heating, as soon as they understood that, and as soon as they were convinced, which was like right away, they're not idiots. They're just greedy motherfuckers, okay? So as soon as they understood that their business model was going to break the world, they set out convincing people that that just wasn't true. And they wouldn't have bothered convincing people that that wasn't true if it wasn't true. They wouldn't have bothered. They wouldn't have spent the money. They wouldn't have bribed the politicians. They wouldn't have suppressed the science. They wouldn't have, endangered their reputations by engaging in these sleazy activities if it wasn't true. One of the proofs, and this is actually admissible in court, and it can get you arrested. One of the ways that a cop can arrest you as a potential criminal if they suspect you are covering up a crime. That you just hid something behind your back, and a cop can say, "Oh, I bet that person just did a criminal act," and so they can frisk you and they can check you, and then sure enough, there's the drugs in your back pocket, and they knew there was something in your back pocket because you just put your hands behind your back and put something in your pocket, and then they're like, and that's suspicious behavior, and so they can frisk you, and it's perfectly legal for them to do that. Probable cause is what they call it. And it's perfectly legal for a judge, for a jury to, like they just did with Donald Trump, for a jury to say, Hey, you were acting in a suspicious way. You were sneaking around. You were sleazing around. You were, trying to pull the wool over our eyes, and we caught you doing it, and so we think you're guilty. That works. That works with the cops. That works with the jury. That works with trials, with judges. It just works. And so the fact that the fossil fuel industries were running around very busy trying to divert us from being worried about global heating being an ultimate effect of their product availability, well, then it must be true. It's probable cause. We have reason to believe that they thought it was true. And if they didn't think it was true, why'd they do those things? Now, are they pure evil for doing that? Now, that's a good question. I'm I, so I have theories on evil that probably don't mesh with other people's thoughts on the topic. Now, if you're a religious person, you probably have a thought about evil, that evil is out here and it's over there and it's down in hell, or it's in some parallel universe, and evil comes into our world and works on us. And that's one theory of evil. And other people who think there is evil in the world will tell you it comes from twisted psychology, where people are obsessed and compulsive, and they don't know what to do with themselves, and they just think all the time about doing terrible things, and then they act out on those terrible inclinations, and evil comes from within, right? That it's aberrant psychology, or approach avoidance conflict, or whatever. I have my own theory of where evil comes from. And I think evil just comes from desire. People want things. War is evil, right? Why do we go to war? Because we want what those other people have, and they won't give it to us. We want their land, we want their women, we want their grain, we want their gold, we want something they have. And we know better than to even ask them for it, right? We're not going to ask them to give us all their gold. Not until we've established a reputation as being, murderous villains. And then we might go up and say, we're here, it's your turn. Do we have to kill you, or are you just going to give us the gold? So if you've established your reputation as violent criminals, then you can walk up to someone and say, hey, can we have your gold? And maybe they'll give it to you. But until you've done that, until you've done all this heinous evil things through war and violence and bloodshed, you're not evil enough to just ask someone for their gold or ask someone for their land. That's how it works. That's how humans have always done their retarded shit, because that's what it is as far as I'm concerned. I'm a scientist and an engineer, and I guess I'm kind of a humanist, although I'm trying not to be all the time. Various degrees of success. But in any case, I guess I'm on the camp of evil isn't outside and evil isn't inside. Evil is a manifestation of our greed. Greed. We want things and we take them, and we'll do whatever we have to do to get them because of greed. So the corporations were greedy, and they knew what was going to happen. And the fossil fuel industries, in particular, coal, oil, and natural gas, they knew what was going to happen. And they were greedy. They were like, that's a thing. We understand the science now. Our own scientists explained it to us. They say it's a threat to our business model if anyone else finds out. Okay, so what? We want the money. So we're going to sell the coal and the oil and natural gas. We're just going to take the money. And so they did. Is that evil? It's business. Is business evil? Maybe it is. Should we stop businesses? We won't. And so here we go. Here we go, folks. Just like I said in the last video. It took me 2 hours to say it. What's wrong with me? Okay. Here we go. Now, the evil that surrounds this so-called climate crisis, which is really global heating, that we're changing the Earth dynamic system. We're altering the way the Earth operates as a machine. Okay, we're operating the gearing of the machine, which is just mechanics, right? It's just physics. Atmospheric mechanics is really atmospheric physics. Where's the wind come from? Where does it go? Where's the rain? Where's the hail? How big is the hail? Is the DVD size or smaller? Right? Where does lightning come from? And all these things, and the hurricanes and the tornadoes and all that stuff. That's all we didn't understand it enough to call it anything other than weather. Well, now we understand it really well. It's Earth dynamics. So that's what it is. Well, we don't call it that. We call it weather. So you want to call it weather, that's fine. That's not what it is. It's the Earth dynamic system. It's the entire Earth, which is a globe, and it has this thin layer of atmosphere, and all this heat comes in from the sun, and a certain amount of it is supposed to go back out into space. But when it doesn't, because of the greenhouse effect, it accumulates in that little layer of atmosphere, and then shit busts loose. All right, physics. So we've known for a long time. The fossil fuel industry knew back in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s. They knew. And that's why they did all this evil shit they did. But I'm the first to say it's not even their fault. They're businesses. That's what they do. You don't like what they did? Well, then you don't like what any businesses do, because they all do the same thing, ultimately. I mean, not all of them. I shouldn't. There are probably people who watch my videos are businessmen and women, and they give good services legitimately, honestly, and they treat their employees well, and they pay them on time, the agreed upon amount, and all this stuff. And it's you're doing a good job, and your neighborhood loves you, employees love you as an employer, everything's working out fine, and that's great. And small businesses tend to be that way because they're embedded in communities that are watching them. But when you get big to a certain point, then you become anonymous. And pretty soon, the people who are running the company aren't even the founders of the company. The founders, the Ben and the Jerry, right, are gone. Annie's is there is no Annie. Annie's gone. Now there's just a big CEO, and the business is part of a much bigger conglomerate that's based in Italy, and no one knows anybody at all. And then they become rat bastards, right? We all know how that is. They pollute and they exploit, and they have slave labor in China, and they have slave labor in Malaysia, and they exploit women, and they tear families apart, and they make their employees sick, work them too much, and pollute their environment where they work, and give them cancer. Ben and Jerry wouldn't do that, right? They would love their employees, and their employees would love them, and they would have ice cream on a Friday, and the community would all show up, and they'd be having a great time. And then they got big. Then they became evil. And so there's this transition where you're not just a guy in his community, and they all know you and love you, and now you're a conglomerate, and no one knows anybody, and no one's responsible. And it's real easy to just act like a rat bastard for the money. So that's just what happens. And nobody wants that, but that's what you get. And the corporations the energy corporations didn't set out to destroy the world for human purposes, but that's what they did. And they just did it for money. Didn't mean to kill all you people, didn't mean to destroy the world, didn't mean to drive humanity to extinction. Sorry, it was an accident. Not even our fault. Although we, did everything we could to keep people from saving themselves from us. But that's also not our fault. We have to do that. And it's true. They have to do that. They have to keep us from attacking them for destroying us. They have to keep us from understanding what they are doing to us. That's their job. They're in business. So I'm making a big deal out of this because I'm talking about evil. Are the fossil fuel industries evil? So people would say they are. Yesterday, in that story on CNN that I read, took me 2 hours to get through it because it was just, go back and watch the video. He said, the Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres, blamed the fossil fuel industries for our current predicament. And I just came out and said, it's not their fault. They're just in business. They have a product to sell. And everyone wants their product. And even the people who bitch and moan about global heating and bitch and moan about how we've been misdirected by the fossil fuel industries, they want their product too. Do you think Antonio Guterres doesn't drive or fly? You think he doesn't fly around the world in his own private airplane doing all the stuff he has to do as Secretary General of the UN? Of course he does. I mean, in some ways, he's in business too. And everybody who has a seat at the UN, they're all in business, and they all represent their country, and they're all like CEOs, right? And they're all representing their business interests of their country. And sometimes it's actually business. Saudi Arabia is a country that's a business. Russia is a country that's a business, that's really a mafia. But mafia is also a business. They're also in business, right? You don't like them. You don't like how they do things, but it's just a business decision. That's all. Organized crime is a business. So all those people that go to the UN and sit on the Security Council and shake each other's hands and sign the documents, they're all in business. And the fossil fuel industry is just another business. And they're all in business together. And they all love the products. And, and the fossil fuel industries, coal, oil, and natural gas will sell their products to whoever wants them. Everybody. They won't even care what your ism is. Are you into communism or socialism or capitalism, or are you Muslim or Buddhist or Christian or Jewish? They don't even care. They're happy, thrilled to sell all you people their products. And it's not their fault that they're happy to sell you their products. It's not their fault that they do a good business. It's not their fault that people want their products. That's not their fault at all. You say, but they lied about global heating. Well, now you know about global heating. Are you not going to buy their products? No, of course you're not going to stop. Now, part of that is because you're trapped, actually. You're trapped buying their products. You're just totally dependent on their product now. And, in fairness, in the late 60s, when the fossil fuel industry was trying to figure out what they're going to do about the threat of global heating and what their approach was going to be, people were already pretty much addicted. I mean, we've been addicted to fossil fuels writ large, starting with coal and then sleazing into oil and then later natural gas. We've been really addicted to fossil fuels really since the mid 1800s, 1850 or so. Certainly the late 1800s, right? We were in with both feet. We were in both feet, both hands, right? So this addiction thing, it really is generational. But the problem is we don't have generational timelines now in which to unwind all that. And yet, see, most people don't know that. I know you don't have generational time. I know you are well and truly fucked, okay? And in fact, people are so well and truly fucked that it's almost why bother? Get to the lifeboats. The ship is going down. We don't even need to talk about it, okay? Just get to the lifeboats, whatever that means for you personally and me, and maybe us working together. What is a lifeboat in this context of global heating? Okay, air conditioning, hyper local agriculture, so you don't have to transport your food thousands and millions and trillions of miles. Village life, circling the wagons, surrounding yourself with like-minded people who are willing to work with you, and you work with them, and you trust each other, and you do as best you can together. Village life, right? I talk about that all the time. I don't really know how to do it. I'm writing a handbook on how to do that, but how realistic is anything I suggest? I don't know. What do I know, right? We've never done this before. Well, we used to live in villages, but we didn't go from industrialized capitalism to village life. That's something we haven't done, but we're just about to. At least those of us that intend to live where we're going to do that. But everyone else, I don't know what their story is. Good luck, I guess. So you can answer for your own satisfaction. Were the fossil fuel companies evil in the early 70s when they decided to prevent us from understanding the danger of going forward using their products? Was that an evil act on their part? Or were they doing the right thing? Now they'll tell you they did the right thing. They'll tell you, well, we just didn't know. And the best, and when you don't know what's going to come, the best thing is to put your best foot forward and go into it bravely and with your eyes open. And you're going to confront the problems as they come, and you're going to innovate, right? And you're going to invent, and you're going to invest. And fossil fuels are the most important thing for Western industrialized civilization. And everything we have, certainly everything on my desk right here, everything, including this fake food, which is really good, by the way. Everything we have is because we were willing to use fossil fuels to create all of this. That's true. So that's a perfectly sound, it sounds good, so it's sound approach to the problem. Yes, global heating is going to be a problem someday. And until then, we're just going to go balls to the walls and get as much goodness out of fossil fuels as we can, so that we are positioned as well as we could be. See, I just did it, right? I just bailed them out. I don't think they had those kind of thoughts. That's what their lobbyists would have said to congressmen and to presidents and politicians in all countries and parliaments and everything. That's what they would have said. The lobbyists would have said, look, we don't really know what the future holds. What we do know is that progress is everything. So we need these fossil fuels and we need to burn them in certain ways and release the CO2 in the atmosphere. But we're going to burn them in ways that create progress. It's going to be progress. And in the future, because they don't really mean themselves, because it's far in the future, but they'll say things like we, right? Because they're trying to put their best foot forward. They're not abandoning responsibility. They're saying we will figure this out and we'll come up with a solution. And at that time, and we'll use all the technology we discovered and all the innovation and all the investment and all that stuff. We'll just leverage all that, just solve the problem. So until it's a problem, then don't worry about it. That was what the lobbyists told everybody for the last, oh, what do we be, 50 some odd years? Almost 60 years? Probably, yeah, probably close to 60 years. Don't worry about it. Yeah, it's real, fine, but let's just plow ahead and we'll fix it. We will fix it. No, we won't. We took the money and we retired, and now we're sipping pina coladas at Puerto Vallarta in our golden years. We didn't do jack. We just convinced everyone around us to not worry about it and let someone else figure it out in the future. And now I think we have stumbled upon true evil. True evil. So how to say this? You know there's going to be a problem, and you want people yet born to fix it. And your excuse is that you can improve your life during your life and into the near future, that you can have a big party, lots of money, influence, parties, everything, okay? And then in the future, someone will fix it. And your excuse for doing that is that while you're having a big party, driving your Corvette convertible to Las Vegas to gamble, like, how does that prepare the future generations to solve this problem? But that's what you're going to do. You're going to take your winnings from your business and you're going to drive to Las Vegas in your Corvette convertible, and you're going to spend $1,000 gambling and eating high on the hog and enjoying yourself and impressing all your friends. And that's going to prepare the future to solve the problem, because that's kind of what happened. We didn't do much in the last 60 years to prepare the future generations to solve the problem. We didn't even talk about it. Now, Al Gore, senator at the time, he talked about it. He was in Congress and he found out about this, I think, while he was going to school. Same way I found out about it. He found out about it, and then he became a congressperson. He became a senator, and he brought the matter to Congress, and he brought in James Hansen, director of Goddard. I don't know actually what his title was at the time, but he was a climate scientist, and he brought him in to testify to Congress. And when did all this happen? This was in the late 80s, I think. So pretty far into it, but not, not as far as we're into it now. Pretty far into it, and gave testimony to Congress. And we were talking about it, and then we stopped talking about it. We could have continued talking about it from that point forward, and we would have we would be now talking about it for 30 years, but we haven't been talking about it, and we still can't talk about it. In fact, along those lines of we just can't talk about this, Ron DeSantis, current governor of Florida, signed a law. He didn't write the law because he's just the governor, but he signed it. He was happy to sign it. He could have vetoed it, but he didn't. He signed it. He signed a law that is intended to remove from government official business all mention of climate change. Now, I don't know how far that extends, but I'm going to guess that now that the law has been signed, if it doesn't extend to, it eventually will extend to everything that's supported by government funds. So legislation, debate, right? Because debate goes into the public record. So if you're working in the Florida government, you can't bring it up as a topic because it'll be written into the official notes, right? Legislation, debate, campaigns. You really couldn't campaign on wanting to solve the climate crisis because that would be official documentation. So you couldn't do that. And if it happens, eventually a curriculum, school curriculum, so you wouldn't be able, that's again, official government business, teaching children. And maybe not so much private school, but I'm sure that the private schools could be completely down with this idea. You can't have it in your curriculum. So you can't have it in legislation, debates around legislation, curriculum, all forms of discussion around government, political campaigns, all these things. It'll just metastasize like a cancer into everything that ever comes close to touching government business, anywhere even close. And there will always be some rabid, foaming at the mouth, climate denier who will sue some school board because you mentioned climate change, and they'll just roll over. They're like, oh fuck, okay, that's right, DeSantis signed that stupid thing, so I guess the guy has a leg to stand on. And is it worth going to court to shut him down so we can continue to talk about climate change in our science classrooms and curriculum? Probably not. So I mean, we'll just roll over and just take it out and just go on about our business, right? So there's always going to be some foaming at the mouth pinhead who just metastasizes this cancer about not being able to talk about climate change. So that's the thing. Not only did we not talk about it for the last 60 years, it's now going to become increasingly difficult to talk about it going forward. So here we are. Global heating is a thing. People are getting scared. Scientists are running around sounding alarming, right? They're risking their careers, as you would kind of hope they would, right? I mean, they're risking their careers. You're not risking yours, but you would expect them to risk their careers on your behalf, to explain everything to you as I am explaining it to you now. You would expect them to. This is your wheelhouse. Yeah, you have a career as a climate scientist, but now you have to explain this shit to me. What, you can't get grants from the federal government under the Trump administration? Well, that's not my fault. You still have to explain this to me. You have to go out on a limb, Mr. Climate Scientist, Miss Climate Scientist. You have to go out on a limb, explain this shit to me. Now, fortunately, I'm retired, so I'm not out on a limb. I'm just sitting here on YouTube being ignored, saying whatever I fucking want to say. And Ron DeSantis just basically shot holes in the bottom of our boat. We just got off the Titanic and we got onto a lifeboat and we're hoping we can save ourselves. And Ron DeSantis is there and he's busy shooting holes in the bottom of the boat with a gun. You can't talk about this. You can't save yourself from this. Boom, 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 boom. And the water's coming up in our lifeboat. What? Where did this guy come from? How did he get on our lifeboat? Why is he shooting holes in our lifeboat? We're going to sink. We just got off the Titanic. We're trying to save ourselves. And he's shooting holes in the bottom of our lifeboat? Yeah, that's what he's doing. You can't talk about this in Florida. And wait, it'll be tomorrow afternoon when they propose similar legislation in Texas and Louisiana and Alabama and Mississippi and Georgia and Kansas and Michigan and the Carolinas, and they'll all be gleefully writing the legislation. Thou shalt not talk about climate change. Thou shalt not discuss climate change except that it are a hoax. Sign, 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 sign. Law, law, law. Sign, sign, sign. They're all going to do it. They're all going to do it because they don't want to deal with it. Just the same way that the fossil fuel companies didn't want to deal with it. And I can't even blame Governor DeSantis for doing that. That's his business. He's in business. And part of his business is making the businesses happy. And the big businesses like Amazon and Microsoft and Apple and ExxonMobil and Shell and Chevron and all the others, all the businesses up here, no one knows who these people are and they have no obligation to anybody. They're all in business. They're all making quarterly profits. And, they're telling him what to do. And he works for them. And so when they tell him, make sure nobody in your state can talk about climate change because we don't want that discussion to happen because we're selling fossil fuels, he's going to say, all right, sounds like a good idea. And he signs that legislation. And after they got done with him and he set the example, then they're going to go to Mississippi and Louisiana and they're going to sell exactly the same thing. You're an oil state. You're on the Gulf. Oil is a big part of the Gulf economy, and you don't want to have any hiccups around the money, right? The money talks. What does money say? Money says money. So pass that legislation, sign that bill, get it out there. No climate change. Stricken. Thou shalt be stricken from the record. No teaching children, no discussing, no legislation, no curriculum, nothing. Thou art stricken from every obelisk. So said the Pharaoh. So that's what's going to happen now. Just about the time that the scientists are telling us to get to the lifeboats, I'm telling you, get to the lifeboats. These people are going up and down the deck of the Titanic, finding every lifeboat and shooting holes in the bottom. Is that evil? Well, by my logic, it wasn't evil when the fossil fuel industries did it because it was business and they had a product to sell. So did the tobacco companies, right? They had a product to sell. So did the auto industry. They had a product to sell. And they didn't want fuel emission controls and they didn't want seat belts and they didn't want airbags and they didn't want any of that stuff. They had a product to sell and that stuff was going to cost money. And so it took decades for those things to happen. And we didn't take their products off the road. We just made them clean up their act a little bit. And then they continued selling their products, whether it's tobacco or fossil fuels or unsafe cars or whatever it was. That's business. So when Ron DeSantis comes along and says, well, in furtherance of business, we shouldn't talk about climate change. What am I supposed to say? He's right. You'll do better business if you don't talk about climate change. It's true. I'm perfectly comfortable admitting that. Now, I still think it's evil because I think the real source of all evil is greed. And we do nasty, shitty things to each other, generally in the form of war. War is just another form of business. Smedley Butler wrote the book. He called the book, War is a Racket. And he went through his book, and it's like 1912 or something. He went through his book, 1920. And he wrote all the examples of all the times he went to war for all these corporations, Dole and the sugar cane, C&H Sugar, and all the companies that are now household names. He went to war for these people. He went into this country so that Dole could plant pineapples. He went into this country so that this other company could create sugar cane plantations. And of course, a lot of us back in the day went to Africa to buy slaves to bring them back to America to work in our fields for free. And that's a kind of warfare, right? Spoils of war. Once you conquer a people, you can take their people and do what you want with them. It's called slavery. The Romans did it. The Greeks did it, right? The Minoans did it. Everybody did it. We did it right here in America. We did it. So is it evil or is it business? And I'm perfectly willing to admit, oh yeah, that's business. That's how people do business. Maybe it's evil, but right now it's business. And until we say, oh yeah, that business stuff, yeah, that shit's evil. Okay, well then we'll call it evil. Right now we have to call it business because that's what it is. It's business. And now we know what's going on. They kept us from thinking about it until we got to a point where now we don't care. And clearly we don't care about global heating. We just don't. People can't even think about it. They can't, and soon all across the great free land of America, you won't even be able to talk about it. You won't even have the freedom of speech to bring it up in legislation or curriculum. And maybe you won't even be able to talk about it on the sidewalk with your neighbor. What if there's laws that say you just can't? It's treasonous. They could do that, right? No, they're not going to do that. They could do that. They could totally do that because they just don't want to deal with it because it interferes with business. There was a time when you couldn't talk about communism. Well, you still can't talk about communism. People look funny at you if you talk about communism, but there was a time if you were talking about communism, they would kill you. Hang you. And if not that, then throw you in prison for the rest of your life. It's treasonous. Talk about communism, to expound communist principles. There were words you just couldn't, the things you couldn't think, words you couldn't use. That's why that's why we have the book 1984. The story of 1984 is about things you can't think, things you can't say, words you can't use. It's narrative warfare. That's why we have that book. So now that's happening. So what's really happening here? Just as it was back in the day, the fossil fuel industries convinced leaders at the time that yes, this is true, but don't worry about it. Some future generation will fix it for us. And that's what happened. No one worried about it. No one said anything. We continue to do the science, and that's fine, right? Doing the science is fine because doing the science is not doing anything about the problem. You're studying the problem, and studying the problem is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Study the problem, please. Here, have some money. Have some money from the fossil fuel industry. They really do that. They give money to universities, and they give money to a university to study climate change. They endow entire departments to study climate change. And the reason why they do that is because then they have some control over what gets published. And we just keep studying it, and they keep putting their thumb on the scale of what we're going to talk about. You can't talk about that. You can't be alarming. We're going to put the thumb on the scale so that it's always in our favor. And that's business. Is that evil? All businesses will do that. Are businesses evil? I don't know. You tell me. You're going to say no. So fine. That I accept that. I asked the question. You said they're not, and I accept that. I'm actually not even going to argue with you about it. And Ron DeSantis, signs away the words climate change. We can't even have that in discussions in Florida anymore, and soon in Texas, and then Louisiana, and then Kentucky, and they won't be. They'll all sign the same bill, same wordings. They'll just borrow it from Florida. Send me an email. Thank you. Sign. Now it's Texas law. Now it's Kentucky law. Now it's the law of Iowa. Sign. They're all going to do it. Is it evil? Well, it's business. So I guess it's not. I'm perfectly happy with that outcome. That's perfectly logical to me because I understand what business is doing. They're in business, and they have to have a profit, and they have to go to their shareholders and prove that they did everything they could to remain profitable. It's actually law. Did you know that shareholders can sue the leadership of the management of a business if they don't do everything they can to make money? Because the shareholders own the business, and they're hiring the management to make money for them. And that's what they have to do. And so if the fossil fuel companies had to come up with a plan to make sure that no one ever does anything about global heating, well, then they did their job. They can't be sued and held liable. They did their job for the company. That's business. Is it evil? You're going to tell me it's not. And I'm going to say, fine. I'm not even going to argue with you about it. I'm perfectly fine with it. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the UN, was the one that was saying that the corporations are evil because they've misled us and lied to us. And I'm like, but that's what they have to do. That's their business. And they're making record profits. That's capitalism. What are you talking about, sir? You're having a problem with capitalism now? Or maybe lots of people have problems with capitalism. Capitalism is a kind of warfare, exploiting nature and people for profit. They're waging war on humanity. Capitalists wage war on nature. So, if you didn't like it, you get rid of them. And here they are. They're running the world. So I guess it's okay. People decided that was okay. I'm not going to argue. I'm just a scientist. I'm just an engineer. I don't take a stand on these things. I ask you, what do you think? Is capitalism evil? It exploits people and nature for profit, destroys entire mountaintops, it destroys valleys, destroys rivers, and takes all the fish out of the sea, and lets people starve and lets people die and pollutes here and a war over there for some other purpose, and that's capitalism, exploiting people and nature for profit. You're like, yeah, well, that's the best way to do it because communism sucks. Okay, fine, because I'm not going to take a stand. Why should I? What difference would it make if I took a stand and I said it was evil? I'm not defining evil here. I'm just asking. And Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the UN, said yesterday in statements that the fossil fuel industries are evil. And I'm saying they're businesses. And there are people who are going to say that Ron DeSantis is evil. I'm going to say he's just serving the needs of businesses. The shit flows downhill, right? The crap flows downhill. And so, but there is this thing that we're doing right now, where we are refusing to even talk about this, starting in Florida, but soon spreading everywhere. We're not even going to talk about this. And we're going to basically tacitly allow future generations to suffer and figure it out while they're suffering. Now, these future generations are little children running around, right? They're in the playgrounds, they're learning their ABCs, and they're going to church, Sunday school, and they're learning about Jesus and the love thy neighbor, and they're playing in the playground, making friends, and they're those little people are going to figure this out. Yes, but they become adults and they can make adult decisions. Well, we're creating a world that we know is going to become increasingly hostile to them. We are creating that world. We know that now. And it doesn't matter that you have legislation that you've signed that doesn't allow us to talk about what we're doing. You can't talk about climate change because it's bad for business. Okay, fine. It probably would be. So if that's your orientation, have promote business and growth and jobs and all this stuff. And that's what you're doing as governor. And that's the most important thing you can do as governor. I don't know what your job is as governor. I should think you maybe have more important work than that. But hey, that's not my call. It's your call. So if your job as governor is to make your state friendly for business, and one of the ways you have to do that is sign away the words climate change, and thou shalt be stricken from every obelisk, fine. But what about the world we're going to leave to the next generation? And people are like, whatever, that's their world. They got to figure it out. Sink or swim, right? Darwinism, baby. If you die, it's because you're a loser, and you deserve to die. And be sure you die before you reproduce, because we don't want any losers like you running around, gumming up the works, right? This is social Darwinism. Is that evil? Because that's what we're going to do. That's what we're doing. I think that's evil. I don't think parents deliberately set out to destroy their children's chances to become adults. Parents don't deliberately do that. Now, a lot of parents end up doing that. And when they destroy their children's future by sexually molesting them or feeding them drugs, or even as a pregnant mother, taking drugs and making your child addicted to drugs in the womb. When parents deliberately do these kinds of things to endanger their children, it breaks the law, and we take their children away from them, and we throw them in jail, and we separate them from society, and we use them to set an example. Don't harm your children. I know they're yours, but really they belong to the community, and the community is saying, no, you can't do that. And we take your child away, and we incarcerate you, and we put you through therapy, and we adopt your child to another bunch of people, right? Whole nother family, and you don't get your child back. That's how we handle parents who deliberately, or even sadly on accident, right? Some parents just do it on accident, just ignorance, not knowing any better, befuddlement, addiction. They just accidentally destroy their child's world. And then we still throw them in prison because it's a big deal to us. And yet, here we are. In Florida, and pretty soon, all 50 states, you won't be able to talk to children about climate change. You won't. And it's because you can't warn them ahead of time of what's coming. And therefore you can't arm them with the tools. What are the tools? Moral, logical, technical, right? You could have an entire curriculum about what causes climate change and global heating. You could teach that, and children could become engineers, and they may even want to dedicate their lives at a young age to solving the problem. They could do that. But if you can't talk about it, then they can't have that thought. So we're not even going to give them the tools to think about it as a problem that they have to solve, because we didn't solve the problem. because we were in business. And this may be where the evil comes from. We're not going to give them the tools or let them decide as adults, prepare them to face this. They're just going to become adults. And one of the first things they discover when they're adults, when they get out of the shackles of ignorance, when they start looking around and making their own decisions about things, making their own friends, talking to people that aren't teachers and captains of industry, when they're making their own decisions and finding their own information and making new friends and getting away from their family and getting away from their church and getting away from the school district and maybe moving to another state, maybe moving to another country. And finally, they become exposed to this threat to their existence, which is called global heating. And maybe they find out that the globe is heating when the globe gets fucking hot. And someone asked the question, excuse me, why is the globe so fucking hot all of a sudden? And someone says, oh yeah, that's physics. What do you mean physics? I took physics courses. We didn't talk about this. Yeah, you're not allowed to, because it can't be in the curriculum. And the professors they sign a contract when they join the school district or the staff of the university that they're not going to talk about it because it's funded by the government. The government says thou shalt not, so they don't. And to protect their careers, which is their business, right? They're all in business too. Fine, it's perfectly acceptable that they're in business. It's called teaching. They're in business. And they've got their career and they have their debt and they have their family and their house and they're in business and they have to make money and they have to make a profit and they have to report to their family every day that they got a check. Every month they got a check from the school district. So they're in business. And so they didn't talk about it. And now you're an adult and you're having to deal with shit and you have children of your own and now you're a refugee and you're running around trying to find a new home because your home just got flooded up to the rafters and you're asking why. Why did that happen? Why is it so hot? Why is it 122 degrees for 6 weeks at a time? And someone says, oh, yeah. Because you're in America, you don't know much about this because you're not allowed to talk about it. But over here in Germany and over here in England, we talk about it all the time. It's called global heating. It's physics. It's, you have 5 minutes, sit down here and I'll explain it to you. And so finally, when you're 25 years old and you happen to visit a friend in England and you're asking, why is the world so fucking hot? It didn't used to be this way. And they say, oh yeah, you're from America, I guess, right? They don't teach you about global heating. Here, sit down, have a beer. I'll explain it to you. It takes about 5 minutes. Over here in England and Germany and France and Spain and Italy, we know all about it. Hell, even the Russians know about it. And you can sit down here, have a beer. I'll explain it to you. And in 5 minutes, because you're in England, in 5 minutes, you'll learn all about it. But what can you do? You have no agency. All of your ability to save yourself, it just boils down to, can you run fast enough? Do you have enough money? It really comes down to money, right? If you have enough money, then global climate change, global heating, it's just not a problem for you. So if you got a lot of money, or you have a wealthy family, you're in business, you have a big business, right? You're Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or one of those other guys, and you have lots of money, then you can outrun the storm, right? You can have multiple homes, one on the West Coast, one on the East Coast, one up in the mountains, one down in the valley. And, you just have your private plane. You just go to whichever one isn't underwater. You go to whichever one isn't suffering 122 degrees Fahrenheit for 6 weeks at a time. You go to whichever one isn't surrounded by refugee camps. You go to whichever one has, a food supply and a water supply. And if 4 houses aren't enough, you go buy a couple of houses in Europe. And you have a house up in Alaska and you just in New Zealand, you just kind of cover all the bases, right? And because you've got money. And so you're going to be fine. And you don't have to worry about it. And it doesn't matter that we never talked about it. It doesn't matter that it's illegal to talk about it in the U.S. after all this legislation gets signed by all these governors who are in business. It doesn't matter because you're wealthy and you just run away. Run away from it. It's fine. Or it's evil. Which is it? Which is it? Because you're going to be fine, and you're the governor of Florida, and you're the governor of Texas, and you're the governor of Georgia, and you're the governor of Tennessee, and you're the governor of Iowa, and you're the governor of Kansas. You don't have to worry. So you sign the legislation. Thou shalt not discuss it. And then when the shit hits the fan, you just run away because you're the governor, and you've got money, and you took the money from the corporations who said, let's not talk about this. It's business. Is it evil? I don't know. You tell me. You tell me. I'm open. Tell me in the comments. Is it evil? You tell me. Educate me. I'm open. You think I'm being cynical? I'm not. I'm open to this discussion. I would like to know what people think. Were the fossil fuel companies evil when they did what they did back in the 60s and the 70s? Or was Al Gore evil for bringing it up and making it a big deal? Or were all the Congress people and all the governors who signed the legislation and said that climate change is a hoax, are they evil? Or all the rest of us evil? All of us hoi polloi? Are we evil because we let them convince us it was not something to worry about? Are we evil because we endangered our children's future and we did it for the lulz, right? For the party. Laughing out loud. Driving to Las Vegas in a convertible Corvette to gamble. Was that evil? We could have done things differently, but we didn't. Was that evil? We knew a long time ago. We didn't do anything about it. We didn't even talk about it. Was that evil? No, probably not. I'll just tell you right up front, it probably wasn't. Not much you can do about it. And the corporations and the government didn't want you to talk about it, so you didn't. And they didn't promote any solutions or provide any options or escape hatches. And so you didn't change your life and you didn't escape. Are you evil for doing that? Or maybe you're just a victim. Well, now you need to start thinking about that because it has come. It's here. Yesterday, the Secretary General of the UN started blaming the corporations for being evil, for profiting and taking the subsidies and selling people terrible products that destroyed the environment and destroyed the Earth dynamic system and contributed to global heating. It's going to kill dozens of people in India. Maybe millions of dozens, but dozens, right? And and howler monkeys falling out of trees, and all the fish are going to die, and all the birds are going to die, and everything is going to die. Sixth mass extinction means exactly what it says on the box, right? So everything's going to die, and everybody's going to die, and everyone's going to run away, and everyone's going to have to live somewhere else, and everyone's going to be escaping just ahead of the flood and the fire and the winds and the hail and the tornadoes and the hurricanes. And the people with money will escape better than the people without. Is that a problem? You tell me, because that's where we're at. That's where we're at. And because we are there, the tiny children who will never understand because we won't let them understand will grow into that hellscape that we chose not to address. Is that evil? If you were a parent and you didn't protect your child from abusive behavior, they would throw you in jail for child neglect and take your child away. So here we are, not telling our children the truth, not fixing the mess we made, letting them grow up, not even allowing anyone else to talk about it. It becomes taboo. It says in the legislation, you can't talk about it. You can't use certain words. Here's a word. Global heating, global warming, climate change. These are greenhouse effect, right? Can't talk about these things. It's right there in the legislation. You'll lose your job. You'll lose your position. You'll lose your privilege. So don't talk about it. So they won't. Pretty soon, all 50 states, maybe not New York and maybe not California, but hey, I wouldn't be too surprised if they did too. I'll just say it. All 50 states in the U.S. will have legislation of some kind or another that makes it taboo to talk about these things. So we won't. And our children will never know. They'll just suffer because they will, because global heating is a thing. It's physics. It's not going anywhere. Just because you don't talk about it, make it taboo, make it contrary to democracy and freedom and the Second Amendment, doesn't mean it goes away, because it doesn't. You can think the earth is flat. It's not. You can think God made the earth and he made it flat because it pleased him. But he didn't, and it's not. Think whatever you like. Have your own facts, your own alternative facts, whatever. Doesn't change reality. Global heating is real. It's physics. We did it. We could talk about it. We could have started talking about it 50 years ago. We didn't. We could talk about it now that we really understand what's going down, but we won't, and we're not. And it's going to become increasingly difficult to do so. So we won't. So we're just condemning our children to a hellscape. And maybe that's where the evil comes in. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe we're all just victims. We're all victims. If I wasn't such a victim, I could do something about this. But I'm broken and damaged. And I've been brainwashed. And all I can think about now is pleasure and making money. And I wish I could be a different person, but I can't because my mind is not my own. I have given over all adult, responsibility. And it's all just business now. It's all just business from top to bottom. And I'm in business too. And I like business. And when I start feeling badly about the business I'm in, I just go buy another car. I'll buy a new car. Or I take my family to Disneyland. When I look at my children and I think I've betrayed them and they're going to grow up to be adults in a hellscape that they can't even understand because no one can prepare them for that. And they're not going to talk about it anyway. I just bundle them into the new car, and it's air conditioned. And we go to Disneyland. And that's what I can do for my kids. Just give them great memories before they die of global heating. And that's not evil. That's just sound parenting. That's where we're at. We are there. We have arrived. Let's go, right? Let's go. I'm in. I'm all in. Let's go. I'm going to come back here every day, every time I think about it. I'm going to tell you the lay of the land. And you're going to think I'm a crackpot. You're going to think I'm crazy. You're going to think I'm a liar. You're going to think I'm a fraud. You're going to think I'm full of shit. And you're going to turn me off. And you're going to unsub. And you're going to thumb down. And you're going to do all these things. I'm just going to come back here tomorrow and say the same thing again. And say the same thing again. And hey, maybe some kid. Here's a thought. I'm motivating myself now, okay? Because I get no motivation from any other corner. I have to motivate myself. So some kid will discover these videos. Some kid next week, next year, next decade will discover these videos and say, oh, okay, this is the thing that's been missing. He's right. No one has ever discussed this before. And I'm going to go on the internet. I'm going to look up this thing that I've never heard of, climate change. I'm going to look this up. And look at this. There's a whole Wikipedia article on it. Of course, it's heavily edited because the wackos, the deniers go in there all the time and try to strike every mention of climate change. But someone comes back and puts it back in. There's a war going on here in Wikipedia. On this Wikipedia page, there's 12,000 edits. Most of them are just removing the word climate change. And it's not even the Chinese government that's doing it, who you would expect to do it because they're a totalitarian regime that's always in, narrative warfare. But this is like, who knows who these people are? They're from all over the world, and they're striking out the word climate change and saying the whole thing is a hoax and it never happened, and it's all communism, and it's all socialism, and it's all capitalism, and it's all evil. And they're having all these narrative warfares in the Wikipedia page. I'm reading the Wikipedia page, and it says, yeah, global heating is a thing, comes from the greenhouse effect. And it's caused by, CO2 emissions in the atmosphere from the burning of fossil fuels. And Cougar was right. Wow. Amazing. So I'm going to keep coming back here. Maybe someone will find my videos and they'll learn something. And maybe it'll open their eyes and they'll say, really, that's a thing? How come I never learned this in school? Wait, Governor Ron DeSantis made it illegal to talk about it? That's why I didn't learn about it in school? Wait, can I find that law? Oh, here's the law right here. My God, he's right. That's exactly what happened. And then they passed a law in Mississippi. And look over here. They passed a law in Texas. And they've all got the same law. When did this happen? I was a child when this happened. No one asked me how I felt about that. And look what they did. Look what they did to my life. Look what these fuckers did to my life. And so here I am. Because some future child, a little kid, will be a bigger person, and they'll be wondering what happened to their world. And maybe they'll come here and they'll find this video and they'll listen to me and they'll come away shocked and surprised and dismayed. And they'll go to their parents and they'll say, what part did you play in this? Were you in business? Mom, dad? Were you so much in business that you couldn't talk to me about this? It wasn't evil, honey. We were just trying to do the best for you. That's why we went to Disneyland so often. Didn't you like that? So don't blame us. We did the best we could. It was the rotten fossil fuel industry that made it so difficult to do anything else but what we ended up doing. So that's going to be the narrative. That's going to be the story. And because I keep coming on here and keep saying, people, it's not the way you think. It's not going to be the way you want. It's going to be the way it is. It's going to be the way it must be because of physics and the laws of thermodynamics, okay? Atmospheric physics, your Earth dynamic system. It's a thing. It's just the way it works, okay? It's just a big machine and it just does certain things. And because it does certain things, that's the way it's going to be. Someone left a comment. Live comments. Please do. I don't respond to them. I probably should. Technological determination, such as from making language, and it's okay. Well, yeah, maybe we're just doomed to do this, and maybe it's just the monkey brain, right? I happen to think it is. And I have said this in other videos, and it's a crass and difficult and harsh thing to say, and I'm sure it pisses people off and makes them mad at me, and they never come back. But I'll say it again. I'll say it here, and you can unsub and downvote and leave and never come back. It's the monkey brain. It's the chimp thing. Two chimps sitting under a banana tree, and the chimp over there has a banana, right? He's peeling the banana. He's going to eat the banana, and the chimp doesn't have the banana. Smacks that chimp up beside the head and takes his banana, peels it himself, even though they're both sitting under a tree full of bananas. I mean, there's that much abundance. We could all have everything we need. But because that guy has something I want and I see him having it and he's about to use it right in front of me and he's not sharing and he's not going to share. He's just eating a banana in front of me. And so I smack him and take his banana and I'll show you how this works. And I eat the banana. It's the monkey mind. He's got something I want, and I take it from him, even though we're both sitting under a tree full of bananas and a jungle full of bananas and a jungle full of other things besides bananas. It's the monkey mind. People don't like being compared to monkeys. And I'm not comparing people to monkeys. It's the monkey mind. It's in there. It's always been in there. Further back than that is the lizard brain. And the fish brain and all those things, all that baggage we carry around. Somewhere in there, there's a monkey brain. And you see the banana, you want the banana. You take the banana. And you brutalize that other monkey because he has the banana that you want. And you take his banana and you eat it. And what part of that isn't, 90% of human history? What part of Rome conquering all those nations and destroying those villages and taking everything from them and taking their people as slaves and taking their women back to Rome to work in their villas? What part of that wasn't monkey want banana? And what part of that wasn't the first business model? Anyway, I got other things to do. I spend too much time on here. I don't know why I do it. It's a waste of my time. Except maybe it's not, right? Maybe I'll do one person a favor before I leave this world. Maybe I'll open somebody's eyes and help them out, help them understand their situation. And may not save them. Maybe they still go to their demise. But I'm not the evil person. I'm saying what had to be said. And they'll at least know what happened to them. They'll know. Even though every state in the union makes it impossible to talk about this, they can't stop me. And someone will come here and they'll learn about global heating and how it happened. And, they'll know. And then I guess they'll die. I can't stop that, but I can make sure they know. What good does it do? Does me good. Here I am trying to do some good for me, myself, and I.